In this video, I'm going to go over 4 main reasons why you freeze up during games and a strategy that you can use to stop freezing up during your performances. Hey there, I'm Eli Strawman, a performance coach and the founder of SuccessStartsWithin.com. Now, have you ever frozen during a game? Something happens where all of a sudden it just feels like maybe your feet are caught in cement. You just can't shoot the ball. You can't swing the bat. You can't throw the ball. You're just freezing. Now, why do you freeze during games? Especially after you've put in all this training, you feel prepared, yet something happens to where your foot's on that brake and you just can't let go. All you're doing is freezing up. I know it's incredibly frustrating, but there are 4 mental game reasons that we can point to as to why this freezing is going to occur. And number 1 is going to be because of fear. When you experience the fear of failure as an athlete, your mind has drifted into the future and you're focused on, I hope I don't make mistakes, I hope I don't fail, I hope I don't mess up. Now, if you don't want to mess up, what is the easiest and the quickest way to not mess up? To not try, right? If you don't want to miss a shot, don't take the shot. If you don't want to swing and miss, don't swing. Now, obviously, if we were talking about baseball or softball and you don't swing, you can still strike out. But that's why we see this freezing happen, because it's a quick and easy kind of safety mechanism to not failing because you don't try. You hold yourself back. And remember, when we are talking about this freezing, it's happening on a subconscious level, because I know you're not out there choosing to freeze up during your performances and willfully choosing not to go out there and play aggressively. It's happening subconsciously. But still, this fear is there. And the more that fear is there, the more you're going to hold yourself back and you're not going to be performing freely and confidently. And then that really ties into reason number 2, which is performance anxiety. Just like with the fear of failure, you are afraid of failing, afraid of what's going to happen if you fail. When you have performance anxiety, you're really worried about what's going to happen. Now, the interesting thing about this anxiety is performance anxiety is also accompanied by a lot of physical symptoms, right? So that's where you have those really shaky legs, maybe the shaky hands, you got that churning feeling in your stomach, a rapid heartbeat, but you experience these physical symptoms. Now, not only do the thoughts that are racing in your mind cause you to freeze up, because the overthinking can kind of cause, you've heard of paralysis by analysis, your mind's racing all over the place, you just can't perform. So that can happen. But what can also happen is the physical symptoms of this performance anxiety can make it feel like you're not in control of your body as much, which can equally cause you to freeze up during your games. And then reason number 3 is going to be perfectionism. Perfectionism is an interesting one because it is going to tie into fear and it's definitely going to tie into anxiety. But when we look at the core reason why you are freezing up during your games, it's going to be because you are trying to be too perfect. When you try to be too perfect, you hesitate. Right? A really good example would be a basketball player who's trying to find the perfect shot. And so every time she passes it up because she wasn't quite open. She didn't quite feel right with that shot, right? Perfectionism, this idea that I need to play perfectly, can quickly lead you to overanalyzing and passing up opportunities because you don't feel like it's quite perfect yet. And then reason number 4 is going to be self-doubt. Self-doubt means, simply put, you don't believe in yourself. You don't have that trust in yourself. And when you do experience self-doubt and you have that lack of belief in yourself, it's going to drastically increase the chances of you experiencing that fear, you experiencing that anxiety, and you trying to be too perfect, because you know that if I could be perfect, if I could play really well for a few games in a row, then my confidence is going to grow. Now, what's interesting about all 4 of these reasons, and you may have noticed this when I was going through them, is that they're all interconnected. Performance anxiety and the fear of failure, we really can't separate the two. Same thing with perfectionism, same thing with self-doubt, especially the self-doubt, because self-doubt's going to kind of lead to all of them. But that's the interesting thing. It's all of these mental game challenges and these mental blocks that weave together that cause you to freeze up during your performances. Now, knowing how frustrating it is to be freezing up during your performances, what can you do? Well, there's a 2-step strategy that I want to show you real fast. But before I get into that strategy, I do want to mention that if you are an athlete or a performer and you're interested in one-on-one mental performance coaching, I've put a link in the description below to learn more about that. So this 2-part strategy is honestly a few different parts, but we're just putting it into a 2-part strategy to make it very simple. But part number 1, or step number 1 of the strategy, is honestly going to be that you need to start working through whatever is the main cause of your freezing up during games, right? So if you are experiencing a lot of fear of failure, there are steps you can take to reduce the fear of failure. Same thing with performance anxiety, perfectionism, and self-doubt. So what I've done in the description below is I've put links to different videos that I've made that walk you through specific steps that you can take to overcome all 4 of these mental blocks or these mental game challenges. Now, I know that that's going to require additional work, right? And it's not a quick fix, but in all honesty, whenever it comes to your mental game, unfortunately, it's not going to be a quick fix because we have to change patterns of thinking that lead to patterns of behavior. So it definitely takes time. But if you put the time in and you honestly, put in the required effort and follow the steps to overcome the challenges, then this will help with your freezing up during games. But now the second part of the strategy is going to be something you start applying on more of an kind of an immediate basis that I've seen some success within one-on-one coaching clients, and that's just so that you can have something that you can begin applying more recently or more frequently to hopefully get some success with this. And so the second part of the strategy is to come up with a simple focus during games. Now, this is going to be known as a performance objective. I'll give you an example or kind of tell you a story about this one basketball player that I was working with who was freezing up because he was really worried about missing shots. And so what we did was I said, when you're shooting, what's going to be one really important thing for you to focus on with your shot physically that would help you have a good shot? And what he told me was that if he kept his elbows in when he was shooting, that's going to help him have a better chance of making the basket, because for him, he honestly knew his shooting form really well. And so he knew that if he kept his elbows in when he was shooting, that was going to help him. So what I told him was, especially during practice this week, but then also during your games, all I want you to focus on when you're shooting, and all I want you to think about when you're on the offensive side, is elbows in, keeping elbows in, keeping elbows in. Now, he did this, and he did begin to take some more shots, and so he wasn't freezing up as much during games, and he also especially wasn't freezing up as much during practice. Now, why do you think that was? Why do you think just focusing on keeping his elbows in helped him not freeze up as much during games and practices? The main reason is because it took his mind off of the fear, off of the worry that we know was driving that freezing up in the first place. It honestly had very little to do with the idea of keeping his elbows in. He could have said it was his follow through. He could have said it was moving without the ball. But the idea is, when we know that subconsciously you're thinking about all these different things and all these different worries and fears are filling your mind, and that causes you to freeze. We need to occupy your mind with something else. And that something else needs to be very simple. Because the root of this freezing is overthinking. Whether you're overthinking the fear, the anxiety, perfectionism, the doubt, you're going over and over in your head about how you don't believe in yourself and you start to question your skills. The only way we can counteract that overthinking is with simplicity and focus. So choose something very simple for yourself, physically, that you can focus on, that's going to allow you to center your mind and just simply perform. Another example is from a runner that I was working with who was freezing up during races because she honestly was feeling the pain because she was a long distance runner and she needed something to push herself through. And so we identified something very simple about her running technique she could focus on in those moments. The main principal idea is that you want to choose something simple to focus on that's going to narrow your attention and take it off of those fears and worries. It honestly isn't as important as to what you choose to focus on, but the one thing I will say is focus on something that's going to help you perform your best, right? With the basketball player, he kept his elbows in or focused on keeping his elbows in because it helped him have more of a consistent shot. Because then what happened was his shot got better because he was focused on something that helped him shoot better, which then increased his confidence, which reduced that self-doubt, which then ultimately reduced a lot of the other mental game challenges. But if you are experiencing this freezing up, remember, the long-term strategy definitely is going to be to overcome those mental blocks. So go ahead and click those links that I put in the description below to start working through those mental blocks for yourself. But then more in the short term, make sure that you choose something very simple to focus on physically when you're performing to narrow that attention and keep your thoughts very, very simple. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I put out new videos each week on sports psychology and mental training. Now, as I said, self-doubt leads to all these other mental blocks. So if you're struggling with self-doubt, go ahead and click this video that I've linked right here that goes into detail on how you can start building confidence as an athlete.